me 2 minutes. I think there's some error. We'll talk about the definition, what retinal detachment is. It is the separation of the neurosensory retina proper from the pigment epithelium. So as we know that there are 10 layers in retina. So the outermost layer is the retinal pigment epithelium and the rest of the part will form the neurosensory retina. Usually there is a potential space in between the both of them, but when they get separated, that is called as retinal detachment. So here we are looking at the normal retina in a healthy eye. Whereas when the retinal detachment occurs, the neurosensory retina proper gets separated from the underlying pigment epithelium. There's something wrong. Give me 2 minutes. I don't know. Is everyone with me? Someone
Yes,
please.
ma'am.
I'll be continuing. First, we need to classify the retinal detachment, and there are three types: phlegmatogenous or primary retinal detachment, tractional retinal detachment, and exudative retinal detachment. Apart from these, there are a combination of detachments which occur, but mainly we need to know about these three. So, coming to rhegmatogenous retinal detachment, you call it as rhegmatogenous whenever the detachment is associated with a break or hole. And along with that, the vitreous usually is in the form of a condensed gel form. But when there is degeneration of vitreous, it liquefies, and that liquefaction of the vitreous will pass through these breaks or holes, and the retinal fluid seeps and it enters the space between the sensory retina and the pigment epithelium. So that forms the fluid filled space in a case of a retinal detachment. So, what are the risk factors associated with rhegmatogenous retinal detachment? First is the age. Most commonly, it occurs between 40 to 60 years of age, but age is no bar in these patients. It can occur even beyond 60 years. Uh, Male is to female ratio, there is a male preponderance, higher male preponderance. It is 3 is to 2, and it usually occurs in myopics as they are associated with more number of retinal degenerations. So myopics are more prone to developing retinal detachment, especially rhegmatogenous type. Aphakics are again they have a higher chance of developing retinal detachment. Then retinal degenerations like lattice and snail track, which are again more common in moderate myopics, they are also more prone for retinal detachment. And as we know, trauma can also cause rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. And senile posterior vitreous detachment is also a high risk factor for rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. So coming to the pathogenesis, what happens here is there is a interplay between the dynamic vitreoretinal traction and the predisposing degeneration in peripheral retina. So, as age increases, as we have seen, increased age is a high risk factor for developing retinal detachment. So, in old age patients, there is increased degeneration in the peripheral retina, and along with that, there is dynamic vitreoretinal traction. So, all these risk factors that we have spoke about, like senile PVD, peripheral retinal degenerations, FAK and trauma. All of them will lead to the causation of retinal break, and that will and if at all there is liquefied vitreous present, that is degenerated vitreous present in such patients, the degenerated vitreous fluid will seep through the retinal brain and it will enter the space between the neurosensory retina and the retinal pigment epithelium, and that results in retinal detachment. This is the pathogenesis of rhegmatogenous type of retinal detachment. So what are the symptoms that these patients complain of? Is one is floaters. Floaters occur because of if there is associated vitreous hemorrhage or vitreous condensation, they appear as floaters or spots that they complain of. That is floating spots. They are hence they are called as floaters. And photopsia is because of, is nothing but it is the flashes of light that the patients will complain of. It is because of it is nothing because of the vitreous movement within the retina. And what are the symptoms of detached retina? Wherever there is an area of detached retina, that will be associated with the localized relative field loss. That is, wherever there is detached retina, the patient will complain that there is he is unable to see in that region of field. So it will be a localized relative field loss. And if at all the detachment is central, then they will complain of sudden painless loss of vision. Remember that it is painless. And signs, you need to look for all the signs in a case of retinal detachment. On external examination, the eye will be completely normal, and intraocular pressure may also be normal or lower. If the detachment is extensive, involving the optic nerve head, then the patient might have Marfan pupil, that is a relative afferent pupillary fluid. And on distant direct ophthalmoscopy, wherever there is a region of detached retina, in that region you will see a gray reflex. Coming to ophthalmoscopic examination, both direct and indirect ophthalmoscopic examination is a must in these patients. So what you see on the examination is whenever there is a freshly detached retina, in the region of the retina, as we have already seen, there will be a gray reflex, and the configuration of the detachment in rhegmatogenous type is convex. That is need to be remembered. And if at all there is a total detachment, the retina will appear as funnel shaped because there is still attachment at the optic head and at the ora serrata, and hence it will appear funnel shaped, and the retinal vessels will appear tortuous and they will be cord-like. And if at all we are seeing any retinal breaks, as we have seen, rhegmatogenous will be associated with retinal breaks or holes in them. So we need to look for associated retinal breaks as well. So these retinal breaks, they appear reddish in color and they may vary in shape. They may be either round in shape or they may be horseshoe shaped. They may be slit-like or anterior dialysis may be present. And these retinal breaks are most commonly located in the superotemporal quadrant. If at all you want to see, if you want to look for an old retinal detachment, if you're suspecting an old retinal detachment, then what you see is retinal thinning will be present because it has become old. There will be retinal atrophy and associated retinal thinning, and there will be retinal pigment epithelium proliferation wherever there is the junction of retinal detachment. So at that location, what you see is the subretinal demarcation line. And secondly, intraretinal cyst formation may also be present in such cases. So here, look at this picture. This is nothing but a rhegmatogenous type of retinal detachment. The retina is detached and associated horseshoe-shaped retinal break is visible in this picture. So similarly, horseshoe-shaped or slit-shaped or round or anterior dialysis of the retina can be present. Then visual field charting has to be done because they will complain of visual field loss. So what you see is they will complain of scotoma, which corresponds to the area of detached retina. And electroretinogram again will be subnormal or it will be completely absent. On ultrasonography, you can confirm the diagnosis of retinal detachment. It shows a typical picture of retinal detachment. Then there are various complications associated with it. And these need to be carefully looked for. Proliferative vitreoretinopathy can be present, complicated cataract, or uveitis may be present because of a lot of inflammation going on in the eye. Uveitis can also be present, and phthisis bulbum. Coming to the treatment part is important in rheumatogenic type of retinal detachment. So first you need to seal the retinal break. There are various methods which can be used, but the most commonly preferred method is the cryocoagulation, and photocoagulation or diathermy can also be used. Next, coming to SRF drainage, you need to drain off the subretinal fluid so as to oppose the neurosensory retina with the retinal pigment epithelium. So to cause the opposition of both of these layers, you need to do SRF drainage. So how do you do this? You insert the needle through the sclera and choroid into the subretinal space, which will allow the opposition between the sensory retina and the retinal pigment epithelium. Next is you need to maintain the scorioretinal opposition. Once you have created the opposition between both the layers, you need to maintain it for at least 5 to 7 days so as to cause the opposition to fix in place. So how do you do this? The most important method will be scleral buckling. Here you do the inward indentation of the sclera. So this is the outermost layer of the sclera. This is the retinal detachment picture that you are seeing here. So this is the outermost layer, that is the sclera. So you cause the inward indentation of the sclera, which will result in external tamponade. What is tamponade is you are creating a pressure so that it will stay in contact with each other. And this will be achieved by using an explant, which could be a silicone sponge or any silicone implant. And if at all it is just an isolated hole, then you can use a radially oriented explant. But if these breaks are not isolated and if they are involving 3 or more quadrants of the retina, then as seen in this picture, a circumferential implant can be used. Sorry, a circumferential explant can be used. Next method is the pneumatic retinopexy. So usually this pneumatic retinopexy is done is preferred whenever there is a fresh superior retinal detachment with 1 or 2 small holes which extend over less than 2 clock areas. That is only for areas where there are retinal holes in the superior temporal region. In such cases, you prefer pneumatic retinopexy, and you seal the breaks using cryopexy, and then what you do is insert a gas bubble inside. You have injected a gas bubble, and this then you properly position the patient so as to take the bubble in the superior position. You need to this is the important step that you should remember, that is the proper positioning of the patient. After injecting the gas bubble, you cannot leave the patient as it is. You need to properly position the patient so that the gas bubble also takes its position into the superior part of the retina. Next is pars plana vitrectomy, endolaser photocoagulation, and internal tamponade can also be done. Indications for these procedures are complicated primary retinal detachments and all types of fractional retinal detachments. You can use these methods. Whenever there are increased fractional bands, vitreotractional bands, and related cases, in such cases you can prefer pars plana vitrectomy. So coming to prophylaxis, in cases of prophylaxis, what you use is photocoagulation or cryotherapy can be used. So the indications for prophylaxis, not in every you do not perform prophylaxis in every case. Indications are high risk cases, that is myopia, aphakia, or retinal detachment has already been present in fellow eye, or if there is a history of retinal detachment in fellow eye, then in such cases you prefer prophylaxis for such patients. Next, coming to tractional detachment. This occurs due to the retina being mechanically pulled away from its bed by the contraction of fibrous tissue in the vitreous. So we were talking about the vitreoretinal traction bands. So whenever there is presence of condensed or fibrous vitreoretinal traction bands within the retina, they cause a pull over the retina, and that will lead to the detachment from its underlying area or underlying bed. So that results in tractional retinal detachment. you need to remember how it differs from regmatogenous and how it differs from exudative. So the causes in the three types of detachments will be different, and that is how you need to differentiate the three types of detachment. So the associations related to tractional detachment will be post-traumatic retraction of scar tissue following a penetrating injury, proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Again, there will be increased neovascularization, and in later stages, that neovascularization will tend to form a fibrous tissue, and that might cause a pull over the retina. Then again in retinopathy of prematurity also you might see a similar picture. Sickle cell retinopathy again similar to proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Then vitreomacular traction syndrome. The name suggests there is a traction, retinal dysplasia and toxopariasis. In all these conditions, we might expect a tractional retinal detachment. So we need to look for these detachment in such conditions. So, what are the clinical features in a case of tractional retinal detachment? There is presence of vitreoretinal bands with lesions of the causative disease. So, whenever there is a disease that we have spoke about, that is there is a risk factor present, there will be a presence of vitreoretinal bands which cause a pull over the retina. And in these conditions, retinal breaks are absent, unlike that of regmatogenous. So you need to differ the condition by looking at the fundus picture. And the configuration of detached area in these conditions will be concave. But as we have seen in regmatogenous, it will be a convex shaped detachment in regmatogenous retinal detachment. And the highest elevation of retina will be present at the site of the vitreoretinal traction. So wherever there is a traction, uh, the elevated portion of retina will be highest in that region, and retinal mobility will be severely reduced, and the shifting fluid is absent because here we are not seeing any fluid presence of fluid, so there is no shifting fluid. Whereas fluid will be present in a case of regmatogenous or exudative. Coming to the treatment part, again, surgery, pars plana vitrectomy has to be done to cut off the tractional bands, and internal tamponade can be given. Either you inject a long-acting gas or a silicone oil, which causes internal tamponade. Next, coming to exudative type of retinal detachment. This is due to the retina being pushed away, either due to a neoplasm or due to accumulation of fluid beneath the retina following any of the inflammatory or vascular lesions. So there are various inflammatory and vascular systemic conditions which can cause exudative type of retinal detachment or even local conditions. So what are the systemic diseases which will lead to exudative retinal detachment? Is one of the most important conditions is toxemia of pregnancy, and even in acute hypertensive crisis also we see a similar picture of exudative retinal detachment when it is not controlled in the proper stages. Then even renal hypertension also will cause a similar condition, blood dyscrasias and polyarteritis nodosa. In all these vascular diseases, what happens is that the fluid leaks from the vessels, and that will result in exudation beneath the neurosensory retina, and hence it will cause retinal detachment. The ocular diseases which are responsible for causing exudative detachment is again congenital abnormalities like nanophthalmos and optic pit. Inflammations again, Harara's disease, sympathetic ophthalmia, and there are various other conditions. You need to go through your book for that. And vascular diseases, one of the common conditions is central serous retinopathy. It will most likely be associated with exudative retinal detachment. Then exudative retinopathy of course, neoplasm like retinoblastoma, malignant melanoma of choroid. These are also a few causes which will cause a push over the retina, and that will lead to exudation. And sudden hypotony due to perforation. What are the clinical features that we see in this condition? There is no photopsia, holes or tears in this condition, unlike regmatogenous type. And here the detachment will appear smooth and convex. Whereas regmatogenous will be, though it is convex in appearance, but it will be a little corrugated, not smooth like the exudative type. And at the summit, it will appear round and fixed in position. And pattern of the retinal vessels is disturbed because there is neovascularization also present on the summit. And shifting fluid, the hallmark feature of this exudative type of retinal detachment is the shifting fluid which is present. It keeps changing position of the detached area with gravity. That is, whenever the detached area moves, the shifting fluid also moves. It takes the position wherever there is gravity. And on transillumination test, simple detachment will appear transparent, whereas solid detachment will appear opaque. So we need to run a few investigations to rule out the systemic conditions which might lead to exudative retinal detachment. So for that, you need to do a thorough ocular and systemic examination. Then on V-scan ultrasonography, you can delineate the underlying cause. That is, if a neoplasm is present, that is malignant melanoma of choroid, or any of the neoplasm is present, retinoblastoma, that can be ruled out under by using V-scan ultrasonography. Then fluorescein angiography is done to detect the source of fluid from where the fluid is coming. That can be detected using fluorescein angiography. Then CT and MRI is also used to rule out any intraocular tumors. And the treatment of this condition is mainly the management of the cause, which is leading to the exudative retinal detachment. So whatever underlying cause that has to be treated, and that might result in spontaneous regression of the fluid. Then, if at all there is presence of intraocular tumors, then you need to perform enucleation. So that is retinal detachment. If you have any doubts, you can please ask. Yes.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, what is the difference between internal tamponade and pneumatic retinopexy, ma'am?
In pneumatic retinopexy, what you do is, one second, just let me show you the slide. So in pneumatic retinopexy, what you do is you use air to create a tamponade, which is almost similar to internal tamponade. But in a case of internal tamponade, to create the apposition between the layers or to create the tamponade, what you're doing is you're using either silicone oil, or you can use a gas bubble. Long acting gas bubble can be used. Whereas in a case of pneumatic retinopexy, you just instill a gas bubble. It could be either SF6 or C3F8, and then you position the patient in such a way that the gas bubble takes the position, take, goes and places in the retinal detachment area, which is mostly superior, and that will cause the tamponade. So internal tamponade and pneumatic retinopexy are almost similar, but pneumatic retinopexy is mostly used in conditions where there is a little amount. That is, mostly the holes are just located in the superior area or in a limited portion of area. Whereas internal tamponade, a large amount of break or a large amount of detachment can also be treated by using internal tamponade. That is the only difference. Otherwise, the procedure, what you're doing, and the principle is almost the same. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Any other doubts? Basically, you need to understand what is the difference between the three types of detachments, what is the cause behind them, and how are you treating them. That will be sufficient. Is it okay? Any other doubts? Okay, I'll carry on with the questions then. So everyone needs to, you know the drill. Everyone needs to write down the questions. I'll be dictating, and you will be asked to answer one of those questions in the next class. I mean, one of them will be picked up and asked to answer. So is everyone ready? I'm going to dictate the questions. Yes, please respond. Shall I dictate? Is everyone
Yes,
ready?
ma'am.
Okay. So your first question will be differential diagnosis of leukocoria. Write about the different treatment modalities of retinoblastoma. I'm repeating the question. First question is differential diagnosis of leukocoria and write about the different treatment modalities of retinoblastoma. That is your first question. Then the second question is etiology, clinical features, and management of ophthalmic neonatorum.
One second. Excuse me, ma'am. Can you like
Yeah.
speak into the mic? Can you like speak into the screen because your voice is muffling out?
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yes. So I'm repeating the second question. The second question is etiology, clinical features, and management of ophthalmia neonatorum. Okay, and the third question will be etiology, types, and management of congenital cataract. Am I clear? Because I think there are some network issues here. That is the reason
Yes,
probably
ma'am.
my voice is not audible. Am I
You're
clear?
good, ma'am. You're good. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So, going to the fourth question, causes of night blindness and explain about fundus findings in retinitis pigmentosa. I'm repeating the fourth question, causes of night blindness, explain about fundus findings in retinitis pigmentosa. Okay, the fifth question is sympathetic ophthalmitis. Write notes on sympathetic ophthalmitis. And the sixth question is formation and drainage of aqueous humor and methods of measuring IOP. I'll repeat the sixth question. Formation and drainage of aqueous humor and methods of measuring intraocular pressure. Did everyone note down all the six questions?
Can you repeat the first, ma'am?
Do you want me to repeat any of the questions?
The first question.
Sorry?
The first question.
Third? Do you want me to
First. The
first?
first
Okay.
one.
The first question is different. Okay, I'm repeating the first question. Differential diagnosis of leukocoria and write about the different treatment modalities of retinoblastoma. Yeah, do you want me to repeat any other question?
Ma'am, third one, can you repeat?
Okay, third. Etiology, types, and management of congenital cataract. That is your third question. Okay, I'm. repeating the other questions as well. Note down if you haven't. The second question is etiology, clinical features, and management of. The fourth question is causes of findings in DEXA. Fifth question is write short notes on sympathetic ophthalmitis. And sixth question is formation and drainage of aqueous humor and methods of measuring intraocular pressure. These are your 6 questions. Clear?